Hey everybody, welcome back to another SAT math video. This is a question from the 2024 official practice test bundle 6 module 2 of the math section. In a triangle ABC, angle B is a right angle. The length of side AB is 10 root 37 and the length of side BC is 24 root 37. What is the length of side AC, right? So they're telling us B is a right angle. So that's basically telling us that this triangle, if a triangle has a right angle, that means it is a right triangle. And they're giving us what look like the lengths of the legs, and we need to find the length of the hypotenuse. I'll draw it out in case that's not clear, and then let's just look at the answer choices. Notice that they're all given in terms of root 37, so we might want to make sure our answer is also in that terms of root 37, right? So keeping all of that in mind, let's just draw it out and just make things a little bit clearer. So we know that this is going to be a right triangle. Okay, so BC, and we know B is where the right angle is going to be. So AB is 10 root 37, and then they're saying BC is 24 root 37, right? Okay, and we need to know AC. So looking at our diagram, AC is the largest length of the triangle, right? Otherwise known as the hypotenuse of the triangle. And if you recall from geometry, there is a very useful theorem that you can use to find the hypotenuse of a triangle if you know the two legs. And of course, you got it right. It is the Pythagorean theorem, right? So we know that our Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, where basically a and b are the two legs of the triangle, and then c is the hypotenuse or the longest length, right? So since they want to know the length of AC, we can just basically plug in our values for A and B and then solve for C, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to first plug in our values. So 10 root 37 squared plus 24 root 37 squared is going to equal c squared, right? And remember, c is just a hypotenuse, so that would be this length AC, right? So let's try and keep everything in terms of root 37 or 37, right? Because remember, all our answers are given in terms of root 37, so that to me tells me that they want us to keep this root 37 around and not, merge it into any other number or simplify any further, right? So with that in mind, let's start evaluating these expressions, right? So 10 squared is going to be 100, okay? And it's going to be 100 times root 37 squared, which basically cancels out the root, right? So that becomes just 100 times 37 plus 24 squared times root 37 squared, right? So 24 squared, that's the same thing as 24 times 24. You could probably do this in your calculator, since calculator is allowed in this section, I think. So I'm just going to do it out here really quick because I'm feeling lazy. I don't want to put my calculator out. So we got 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 8, that becomes 96. 0, and then 2 times 24 is 48. And then let's just add these up. So 6, and that becomes 17. 1 plus 4 is 5, 76. Okay, you can use a calculator, it probably is faster on the test, or if you want to just do it in your head, you're confident in your ability to do that, feel free to do so. So then we know 24 squared is going to be 576. 37 squared is just going to be 37, okay? And that is equal to c squared. All right. Now, again, remember, we don't want to merge these. We don't want to find make this 3700 and whatever this for 567 or 76 times 37, because remember we have all our answers in root 37. So I'm not going to touch these, but instead what I'm going to do is make our lives a little easier so we don't have to keep moving our terms around, and make this a little bit easier to work with. So what we can do is we can factor out the 37. So recall when you have a for example, say we had in algebraic terms ax plus bx, we could factor out the common factor, which would be in this example x, right? So we could rewrite it as x is equal to a plus b, right? So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to factor out the common term amongst these two terms, right? We have a common factor, right, which is 37. So I'm going to factor out the 37. So we got 37 times 100 plus 576 is equal to c squared. Okay, so did a little bit of factoring, nothing too crazy, I hope. And now we can simplify and make things a little bit easier, right? So we're going to say 37 times the quantity 100 plus 576 is 676 equal to c squared. So we're getting closer, right? Again, we still have our 37 by itself, just like how the answers want us to have it. Now all we got to do is solve for c, right? Because c is our hypotenuse. So to solve for c, we need to take the square root of both sides. So, oops, let me write that a little bit nicer. There we go. So the c squared square rooted is just going to be c, right? So we know this is going to equal c. And we have this big radical term, right? We have 37 times 676, but a nice property of radicals is that multiplying two radicals together is the same as multiplying this two numbers underneath the same radical. What I mean by that is if we have square root a times square root b, that is the same as square root a times b, right? So we can utilize this property of radicals to our advantage and rewrite this as basically the square root of 37 times the square root of 676, right? So now we have our root 37 out by itself in its own term, which is kind of what we wanted, right? Because all our answers, remember, are in terms of root 37. And we just need to find the square root of 676. So I would totally expect you guys to use your calculator at this point, but I like to do math and just to keep practicing it, because, otherwise we're going to make a YouTube channel full of math problems, right? So let's try and figure this one out. So the way to approach simplifying a radical without a calculator is to basically find the greatest common factors of this number, right? What I mean by that is what numbers, when multiplied together, and what are the largest numbers basically multiplied together that equals 676. So we're just going to basically do a lot of long division, right? So let's just rewrite our radical here. So this can be a series of numbers multiplied together. So the way we can figure out what the greatest common factors are is by basically dividing, right? Or that's the way I like to try and do it. So I'm just going to write out some long division here. First things first, since this is a even number, we know it's going to go into 2, right? So we have 2 goes into 6 3 times, right? And then that becomes 0. Next, we will try 2 goes into 7. 2 times 3 is equal to 6, right? So yeah, that looks right. So 2 times 3 is equal to 6. Then that 7 minus 6 is going to equal 1. And I'm kind of drawing it not correctly, but you get the idea, right? And then we bring the 6 down. Lastly, 2 times 8 is equal to 16. And then we get 0, right? We just pan down a little bit. Much better. So we know that 2 times 338 is equal to 776. So that's what we're going to write over here. So we got 2 times 338 38. So now we can do the same thing for 338. Again, it's an even number, so let's try dividing it by 2. Nope, didn't mean to do that. 338. And again, if you don't want to solve this by hand, you can easily just use your calculator. But I'm just going to show you how I would do it um, if I was taking the SAT without a calculator, right? So again, 2 goes into 3 one time, then you have 3 minus 2, that gives us 1. Then we bring the 3 down, so then we get a 13, so 2 goes into 13 6 times, right? Because 2 times 6 is 12. Then we have 12, 13 minus 12 is going to give us 1. And then lastly, we bring the 8 down. And then finally, 2 goes into 18 9 times, right? So then we're left with 169. So 18, again, let me just write it all out. We get 18 minus 18 is 0. Nice. So then we know that the root of 2 times 338 is the same as 2 times 2 times 169, right? Now, this number is a little special. If you are familiar with like the squares of numbers, like if you know like 2 squared is 4, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, you might be able to recognize this number as a square, right? So we could basically try and solve for this one, but I know that this is just going to be 13 squared actually, because I had done this problem a little bit earlier. So this actually ends up being 2 times 2 times 13 times 13, right? So now we have it pretty much in its greatest common factors right now. So what we do whenever we have a square root is when we have it in this form as a form of greatest common factors, every time we see two numbers, we take those two numbers out of the radical, right? So these two numbers are going to go out, and then these two numbers are going to go out, right? So you can imagine that we basically had like instead of 2 times 2, you can rewrite that as like 2 squared, right? But what ends up happening is for every 2 of the same number we get, we just take one version of that out, right? So then this becomes 2 times 13 times 13, or 2 times 13, right? So basically that equals 26, right? So all of that is basically to say that the square root of 676 is equal to 26, right? So if we go back to our original problem, right, we basically had root 37 times root 676, but we figured out that that actually is equal to 26 times the root of 37, and you will see that this is our answer choice B. All right, so hopefully that made sense. Again, I fully expect you by the time you got to this point right here, when you got to this point here, that you probably would have used your calculator. Probably would have taken you a lot more time, but I just showed you guys how I would do it without a calculator in case you just wanted to know, just for your general knowledge sake. So again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if there's anything I can improve on these videos. As always, check out Khan Academy. They have a lot of great resources for the SAT and ACT. And as always, thank you for watching.